Welcome to the FINK It Isn't Until It Is podcast. I'm Finn.
I'm Tim.
I'm Guy.
Chapter 6, Spring 2012 to Winter 2012. Dying Now Would Be Bad, in which we tour a lot and play a gig with a world-famous orchestra. Nice.
Indeed.
Which we do. This year's really interesting. This It Isn't Until It Is bookie work. This chapter is essentially not based around an album or a release or anything. This is just a touring year. And I suppose we gave it its own chapter, not because it was like, oh, dude, and then we played Carnegie Hall, and then we played, it's actually just more like this year, we just toured a lot. And I thought we just wanted to document what it's like to spend a year on the road, and not a year just doing the UK or a year touring France. This is a year where we had some amazing experiences, some of which we'd had before, some of which were like new, some of which were one-offs. Yeah, symphony orchestra gig, India tour, America, a crazy American tour.
Yeah, and a sort of proper festy season.
But why did we call this chapter Dying Now Would Be Bad?
Because of the outside the venue in Dornbirn, Konrad Sohn, correct me if I'm wrong here too, this is my recollection, is the bus was parked on something of a hill.
Well, it's a mountain, isn't it? So it is something of a hill. It's a mountain.
It is, yeah, it's a mountain pass, and it is not a well-lit loadout. It can be done in quite a dangerous way if you don't do it cleverly. And what it was Rich was in the back, Mystery Rich, our heavy metal tour manager, was in the back of the trailer, and stuff started moving around. He didn't have enough limbs to stop everything from rolling. And
he did do his usual human shield though. He did try and spread himself.
He just shielded
wide
himself.
As possible, take the bullet.
I think he used his face. I think he used his face to stop things falling off the top of at one point. And I think it was Tim. I think he shouted, "We will die now," and I think Tim turned around and went, "And dying now would be bad."
Right, that explains it.
That is literally what happened.
Because dying now would be bad, not only because it would be bad just generally, but also we've got lots of stuff we need to do.
Yeah, we've got lots of gigs ahead. Yeah,
we've got loads of gigs. Yeah, don't die now.
We can die in a few weeks.
I mean, the load into Konrad Sohn, let me just say that it's a classic Austrian show. We love playing this show. We still play it. We love this venue.
Sure.
But it is in a mountain pass. You have to park the bus on the road, load all your gear across a rickety bridge, across a stream, and in November, when we always seem to bloody play it, it's always like a torrential, rapid, and then you have to somehow get the gear over this rough, gravelly ground into the venue, and then when you're in the venue, which is amazing, that the luxury doesn't begin there. It kind of, I remember upstairs at Konrad Sohn, we're all huddled around a little electric heater just to get your fingers warm enough to do the show. I mean, they've actually upgraded it now, by the way, guys. If we play it on the next tour, they've used COVID to completely restructure the whole genre.
Oh, really? Okay.
Wow,
but they use it for raves. And I remember when we show up to Konrad Sohn on this tour, you would look on the ground and there's loads of baggies everywhere. Do you remember, Guy?
Yeah.
And it was like the night before there'd been some sort of teenage rave up there, and there was all these little druggy baggies all over the place. We're like, dude, what is this spot, man? This is crazy. Up in the mountains, in the forest, by a torrential river. So cool.
Yeah. Every bag as empty as the last.
Yeah, we did check. We did look pretty hard.
Depressing.
So 2012 begins with one of Sumit's curveball, side hustle. Dude, I got this gig.
The biggest one of all time, perhaps.
Perhaps, possibly, yeah. So part of our touring schedule is, we were touring at cost. Let's not mince words about that. We would get home from a tour and we wouldn't all be buying chateaus in Tuscany. We'd be just about covering the rent and maybe buying new jeans. So Sumit had this gig in the diary in Amsterdam with this Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. And not only was it an incredibly glamorous symphony orchestra collaborative gig, but it was also the paycheck that covered that part of the year. It was a big ticket for us, so it filled a giant tour hole for us. So that was exciting too. That we were doing a gig for that much money was also very exciting. Yeah. But every year in Holland, they have this orange explosion of sort of patriotic Queen's Night. Now it's King's Night, of course. And the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, with its own beautifully subsidised venue, they open its doors to the youth. And by youth, they mean under 60s. And in this case, under 30s, wasn't it? Entree was the system they had. By getting a young group like us and doing a collab gig. And they'd had a few goes at it. And as Mark Van Dongen had told us, they'd learnt a few lessons. They had Coco Rosie, which he said was rather organic. And then they had Patrick Watson, which was bloody brilliant. And for us, they'd kind of got their eye in, and they were like, right, you guys are going to do like 3 on your own, and the orchestra are going to do 3 pieces on their own, kind of British themed kind of ideas.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do a bunch of Fink and the orchestra collaborations, which are going to be like big. And that's basically going to be the show. And then we sing the national anthem at the end, and everybody bows, you get a bunch of flowers, and it's great. So I don't remember being really nervous about that until we actually rocked up to the venue.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth pointing out at this point that Jules Buckley, who's now like the Uberist conductor.
He was always the lightning conductor. He was always the conductor to the stars.
But now I feel like every 2 minutes someone's saying, oh, and this is done in collaboration with Jules Buckley, and it's like, oh God, Jules, you must be the busiest man in pop.
What can I say? He's the man. He's the man. But he can speak band.
That's true.
And he can speak classical.
Yes.
And that goes for language like, hey, dude, why don't you play it a little bit slower? And then he'll turn to the oboe guy and be like, can you just legato that venti?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, okay, yeah, he can speak their language. So he was vital to us because none of us speak classical at all. In fact, we barely, at this point, I mean, it's still the case to be honest, but at this point, we were barely using chords to speak to each other. We were talking about, especially because of my ignorance, to be fair, but you were like, it's the second one you play. Or like, oh, dude, you know that second chord in that chorus? Play that one. It wasn't kind of like, dude, just ninth up that seventh, dude.
Yeah.
It was very much more like, I didn't even know what a G was at that point. So we needed him as our translator, didn't we, basically, for this mission?
That's true.
I think he told us straight away that we had allies and enemies within the orchestra. Do you remember?
True,
He said some of these guys think this is so far beneath them, they're never going to be on side, they're never going to smile at you, they're just going to do the gig. Don't worry about those guys. Some of the people here, however, love it. They're on your side. Figure out who those guys are and see if you can get a bit of chemistry cracking with them. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Jules said to me when he was writing the scores for this thing, because we had a few, I think he spoke to Timmy, he spoke to you a lot more than I when you were talking about structurizing
Yeah, we
this out.
Skyped a lot. Yeah, we heard. I heard sort of the arrangements as he was going along to the point where actually when we arrived for that first day of the first rehearsal in Amsterdam, I sort of knew-ish what to expect, but I think you and Guy thought it was going to be kind of vaguely ambient noise, like the orchestra was going to play little bits and pieces in the background.
I think I still refer to them as strings at that point.
Yes, exactly.
Strings.
Yeah.
But Jules was saying to me, Jules's mission, I have to include everybody. It's a symphony orchestra. It's not a quartet. I've got to think about the harp guy and the oboe section. I've got to give everybody a go.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh man, I mean, that's impossible. But he did such a wonderful job because I guess our music is, let's say, simple enough to give so much bandwidth to a symphony orchestra. You give a symphony orchestra G and they can go forever, really.
Yeah.
But
he wrote actual melodies, didn't he? I mean,
he did amazing.
Incredible.
He was amazing. I mean, he was amazing. I mean, and he actually forced me to do a solo number as well. That's another story.
That is another story.
But he actually played chicken with me. He was just kind of like, dude, I think you should do this without your guitar, just solo. And I'm like, oh no, dude. And then he kept telling me to do it. I'm like, oh no, dude. And he was like, look, if you haven't got the courage to do it, that's okay. I was like, easy there, young man, easy tiger.
I was there for that conversation. You two locked horns quite hard on that one. It was an amazing conversation because, it's a bit for a person like myself to be sat there with a pretty acrimonious musical argument happening between two pretty visionary and pretty confident fellas. He was telling, and he called you a coward. He said you're too scared to do this.
He totally did. And he was right. I was scared.
Yeah, but
also,
but you were really funny. Your reaction, you turned around and he said, well, you're too scared to change that bit. I've told you sounds Disney in one of the other tracks. And he went Disney just as much as you went coward.
Well, that's the one that got cut from the record. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that Disney moment. That was a little piccolo horn or something, wasn't it? Going,
I remember you just literally you singled out that one note. You were just like this one note going doo-doo. You were like, nah.
Dude, yeah, shocking. But I mean, he had a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of people to please on that gig. But he handed me the music. Said, you just sing this. And it's like, dude, I can't read music.
That
This
doesn't
to
mean
me is,
anything,
you might as well
yeah.
just handed me Morse code. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember when we loaded into the gig and this concert hall is so fancy. I mean, dude, stop it. I mean, it's just like, as subsidized as you can get, and even it's like the BBC, it even has its own canteen.
Yeah, sure. Underneath.
So you're kind of like, wow, okay, they've got their own canteen. I mean, and we were touring Beasts. We were on tour. It was jammed in the middle of a rough and ready German run.
Yeah, it was in between Luxembourg and Münster. I remember it distinctly. We had to get dropped off with all our shit, and everyone else went home for a few days.
And we had so many rehearsals for this show because the orchestra needed a week.
The rehearsals were so fucking weird. That's
So
what
weird.
spun me most, was that we sat down to rehearse and, okay, there's the initial shock of hearing them all strike up at once the first time. And then we got through a track, and we haven't actually mentioned the conductor yet, Ivan. I remember at the end of a run-through of a certain track, he said a couple of points. He said, okay, to this section over here, remember this, and to that section over there, can you try doing this? And all the musicians nodded, and a couple of them wrote something down on the sheet music in front of them, and then they all just got up and walked out of the room.
Yeah, union approved tea break.
Yeah.
Sorry, got to go.
No, that was the end of rehearsals for the day. They've agreed to change. That's that. And you and me looked at each other, and our mindset was, well, if we make a change to something, we run it, and probably more than once.
Yeah, we have to run it like in ad nauseam until
We'd run it 3-4 more times until we all go, right, there we are. Not these guys. Once it's discussed, that's it. The change is in place.
Yeah, but that's another thing Mark said to us, wasn't it? In one of his many pep talks, let's say, was don't make any mistakes, don't do any ad libs. You can't miss a cue. You can't just come back if you miss your verse. You can't add an extra bar on a bridge. You are strapped in, and they're going to play what's written on the paper. It's a Ron Burgundy situation. They're going to play what's written on the paper, whether or not you're playing a new movement. So and I think for Timmy that was fine, because Timmy's like, yeah, I got it. 16 bars into Perfect Darkness. Yeah. And then, okay, yeah. And me and Guy were just kind of like, we can't really just look at Tim for our cues on this gig. It's not really that kind of show anymore.
Yeah.
This is like, we can't look at Tim and be like, do I come in now? Is it now? Is it now?
Yeah.
Because Timmy will be like, dude, I got a 120-piece orchestra depending on me right now. I can't be carrying you right now, Or Guy going like, is this the change? Is this the change now? And Timmy would just be like, I'm not even going to look at you. Dude.
Man.
Just fucking remember it.
I mean, at that point, we'd probably been doing Sort of Revolution live for, 4 years? About that? At that point. And it's a bassline heavy tune. I know that bassline. And yet, there is a second, I'll point it out now, it's a bit embarrassing, but there you go.
Is there? In the gig?
Yeah,
No way.
Yeah. If you listen really, really closely to the RCO gig, you can hear that there's one change where I come in a nanosecond late, and that's because
Oh, no.
my brain did that thing of thinking, I don't know what note I'm supposed to go to next
Yeah,
in
right, dude,
advance.
if in doubt, it's a D though, right?
Even though,
Surely.
it was a D actually. But even though I knew, even though my fingers knew and my brain knew, but my brain had just thought, what if I forget? What if I get this wrong? And the bass player, the lead of the basses, was actually on telly in Britain at the time. They were doing a classical version of of The Voice sort of thing, and he was Dominic Seldis. He was the bass player, was one of the judges on there, and there he was sat over the other side, and I was already terrified, thinking, if I mess up my own bass line. And I looked at him and he grinned at me and gave me a big thumbs up across the stage at the actual gig. And then the adrenaline, I just thought, okay, if I balls this up now, I can't blame anyone else.
That's the thing, man. It was like the adrenaline of that show was insane.
Yeah.
And because it's a symphony orchestra playing your music. And in between these movements, we would go sit on like a couch that they put on the stage.
Yeah.
So we'd be sat there through a Benjamin Britten piece, kind of nodding, oh yeah, I love this. Yeah, I love this. But really inside, of drinking water stuff, but really inside just being like, oh my God. It's like doing a really scary gig and then getting a 5-minute break where you stay on the stage during the show to just absorb even more how terrifying it is when you launch into Yesterday Was Hard and All of Us in 5 minutes.
It's so weird. And also they didn't clap. They're not used to clapping in between movements. So, but for us, obviously, we clap. People clap after every song. So we I remember we sort of, like forced people to clap because it was so like made us so nervous. And I think there was one song I even started clapping myself to get people to clap, you know.
Awesome.
Because otherwise it just felt so strange.
It's true. I mean, the audience was definitely FINK fans, but there was a large section of the audience that were classical music fans. So it was a really great evening. It was a really great hybridized. The whole thing was just a wonderful hybrid, and and you know, and we also launched, or the RCO launched this app for the first time ever, this live music app, first time it had ever been done. So that if you bought the app, and you could watch it on your Apple TV at home when the gig started. So lots of people watched it in America and in other places in the world live, and it's just like, God, it was so good.
It was amazing. It was so.
Do I remember that app was actually? I think it went beyond that. I think you could actually control what you were watching. If on the app, if you wanted to switch cameras, you could switch cameras, couldn't you? If I remember rightly. So
no, it was they had an editing suite in the loft, but you could switch between, like, afterwards. You could have our band commentary, which thankfully is no longer available. The app's dead now. It's super dead. It's like a dinosaur. But where they said to us, so tomorrow you're going to do a band commentary. And I think me and you, Guy, were just like, yeah, cool, man. We'll just rock up and be like, that was cool. Oh, dude, you look really cool. And actually it was at like 8:30 a.m.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was filmed, and I was just feeling like, oh, dude, not good at all. And I think you'd had a rather good night in Amsterdam as well after that show, deservedly. So we were just kind of like, oh god,
that was painful.
Bad.
But we did enjoy the hammer bit, though, the bit where the guy uses the hammer.
The hammer, Thor's hammer. It was awesome. So you quote in the book, in our little booky work, you quote Mark Van Dongen as his reaction when you told him, when he asked you what the next.
Oh, the next show was going to be, he said, what are you doing next? And I said, well, in 2 days' time, we're playing a little club in Münster, Germany. And he smiled broadly and went, that will be a disappointment.
I had a funny experience with Mark as well, where after a rehearsal, everybody else had cleared out. I don't know where you guys were, but I was in the main room, and one of the bass players came out with an upright bass, went right into the middle of the stage and just started playing it. Various different styles.
I remember that.
And so you were in the room, and Mark was stood there watching, and I was stood there watching, and all the other bass players were in a group, and they walked around the building as this person played. They went upstairs, they went to the balconies, they came down, they stood them, and they were all talking amongst themselves. And Mark said to me, would you like to know what they're doing? And I said, yeah, well, what are they doing? And he said, right, well, we're considering buying this bass for the orchestra. And whenever we consider buying an instrument, this is how we do the process. We get one of the players to play the instrument, and then all of the rest of the section will walk around the building listening to the acoustics in various places.
No way.
And then they will have a democratic show of hands as to whether or not we buy this instrument.
But I remember a detail on this one, and that was the fact that it was number 17.
Number 17 bass.
It wasn't like the primary bass.
Right.
It was like actually the cheapest one in the pit.
Yeah.
It was like they needed to replace the crappy one.
Yeah, I mean...
But it was still like...
utter madness. Utter madness. And this bass
sounded...
It was a six-figure... He told me the price, which I won't say on here, but I mean, literally, for me, having parted with a few grand on a bass at some point in my life and thinking, holy hell, that's a wonderful amount of money to spend on an instrument. Yeah, when he told me that number, okay, different sport. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was great, that show. And I remember afterwards feeling like we'd done something really great, but also what part of the nerves was created by the fact that we kind of all knew this was probably a one-time gig.
Yeah, you don't get to do that very often.
I don't think any of us thought, now this is going to be our symphony period.
Yeah.
No. It was like, this is going to... And they never asked us back, might I add.
No, well,
But,
it's a one-time, as you said, it is a one-time deal. It's an invite only. You're only going to get invited once, which all the more don't balls the gig up, You really got to get this right.
Yeah.
To be honest though, gents, this is the videos of those, the YouTube that went up of these, was the first videos that I could show to my parents where they really got it. Like I could play them FINK stuff before, and they could see they were trying, and they were like, yeah, okay, this kind of, I like it, yeah, nice stuff,
Yeah.
But when I played my dad, Yesterday Was Hard and All of Us with the orchestra, it was a magnificent moment.
Sumit had to really fight for that.
To get them for YouTube.
I mean, he said to to allow us to put something on YouTube. And he almost had to kind of tell them what YouTube was.
Right.
He was like, listen, this gig is to appeal as Mark Van Dongen said to us, we don't have a problem selling out tickets. This venue is sold out every night of the year, all the time. We have a problem getting audiences under 70. So this is what this gig is about. And Sumit's like, if you really mean that, then you need to let us put something on YouTube, which is where the audience you're looking for is looking for new music and new experiences. And yeah, it was a tough sell for Sumibi to get that on YouTube. I'm so glad he did that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure, because that was one of the kind of defining things that maybe got Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us onto the Selma soundtrack, wasn't it? Because that was from that gig.
Yeah, maybe. No, I think that's because me and Ava had an ice cream in LA and I gave her a copy of the CD. And then she went into the editing suite that night, having just heard it in the car. It's just one of those. I'm sure that's how it happened. But I mean,
but I mean, it's nice that the orchestra probably lifted that song to that level of like,
oh yeah,
you know,
I mean,
end of
don't
Selma
get me wrong.
kind of.
I've been in sessions since where I've been in a room with a bunch of people and who rightly have absolutely no idea who I am and, you know, treat me like an acoustic plug-in.
Sure.
And then at the end of the session, they're like, yeah, I did this, what have you done? And I'm like, you know, I've done a few things. Let me just think, what can I show you on YouTube that I've done? I remember this one gig, and I always show them the RCO just for the just for the kind of like, because at the beginning of the video, it's just us in the dark.
Yes.
And then it kind of pans out and then the orchestra just comes in and it's just kind of like, it's like the best reveal ever.
Yeah,
and it's just,
yeah.
I shamelessly have done that
That's
a couple
good.
of times,
That's
to be
good.
fair.
That's good.
Shame on me.
No, that's fair enough. It's that sort of experience. It really is. For any musician, it's just what a privilege to get to play with musicians of that caliber.
Now, I think that gig really loosened us up for the rest of the year to come.
Yeah,
Because we had a
definitely did.
lot of stuff to do the rest of the year. Lots of gigs, lots of festivals. And I remember, you know, you said in the book, Finn, that the very next gig, you stood up for the whole show for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
that
I
right?
kicked
Yeah,
away
yeah.
the stool.
That's
It's
right.
like, no. Because, you know, after that, dude, come on. And you want to raise your game. And because
Yeah.
I'd stood up to do sort of Revolution with the orchestra, I was like, okay, this is doable. You just lose the guitar skill element, but you gain a looseness and a performance element.
Yeah.
It's just different, isn't
yeah,
it? You know?
I mean, it absolutely made me think for the rest of my touring, you know, that year. Okay, this year is where you learn new stuff. You know, you stand up, for example, or you retool your tracks. Because every time we played Yesterday Was Hard on All of Us or Berlin Sunrise, to this day, in the back of our minds, we hear the orchestra. I'm pretty sure of that. You know, running the riffs through.
Definitely. But I mean, I just think it's just as well, really, because I do think, just fast forward a little bit to when we did the Colours of Ostrava Festival that summer, which was, I don't know, but I feel like that was almost like the first grown-up festival performance we ever did.
Yeah, we did good,
because
didn't we? We did good on that
We were
festival.
standing up. It was a sort of early evening slot. The sun was just coming down. And I remember thinking while we were on stage, thank God we did what we've done. Thank God we did the RCO gig. Thank God we did all the other stuff, because I don't think we would have knocked this one out of the park in quite the same way. We would have felt a bit inadequate still.
Yeah, I mean, we'd done gigs in friendly territories, like we'd done Lowlands the previous year, and we were rock and roll. But Colours of Ostrava was in a different territory. It was a new place. The stage wasn't exactly very vibey. It was a kind of a car park area of this festival, and it was a tough gig. And I think I totally know what you mean. I remember that feeling too of, okay, this is a tough gig. Let's see how road worn we are. Let's trot out this festival set and turn, you know, let's go 0 to hero on a festival set that we've witnessed many times at other festivals with other bands, you know, where we're kind of like, yeah, I'm a bit bored, you know, impress me. And you leave finish the show being like, oh my God, this is the best band I've ever seen. Oh my God, they're amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Colours of Ostrava was a great festival. And if I remember rightly, isn't the same word for window pane the same word for arse in that country's dialect? Because we were driving around and we'd see these billboards for window replacing people that were really sexy. Just with the sexy ladies, you remember? And we were like, we asked our handler, what's the connection between windows and bottoms? And they were like, it is a play on words, it is the same word. I'm like, that's so random.
See, I remember the Colours of Ostrava gig. It was they got hit by a massive downpour just before we went out, or maybe a couple of tracks in, the heavens just opened and no one went anywhere. And I thought, I love when that happens at a festival, when no one goes, even though they're getting totally rained on. And yeah, it was great. It was a really lovely gig. But I remember being distracted as a result by there was just so many beautiful people at the front that it was one of the first gigs where I was trying to look at Finn for cues, and the background was so alluring. I found myself missing a couple of come away with the fairies. What on earth? How on earth did I get distracted?
Was our festival season after the US tour?
No, just before. We did the US tour in September.
Was this the US tour that I didn't come on?
Yeah.
I think this is the tour that I had to miss because we were expecting my second child. So
that's a beautiful thing, man. Me and Timmy, for whatever reason, we were well up for it as a duo. We were just on it, and this was a really great tour, and we were going to self-drive it, and we knew what that meant. We'd done it. We had run around before, so this was like, okay, we are 100% up for it. And just full disclosure, maybe the thought of Guy in the back of the splitter because at the time you were definitely in your Trigger Grump sort of heyday.
Yeah.
It would have been like, we're going to have to do a 36-hour drive with Guy in the back. Is that something we can live with?
Yeah.
Is that doable?
Is life easier without?
Because Guy would just be like, I don't know. It would have been apocalyptic level of grump when he said, "Oh, dude, are we nearly there?" And be like, "No, just another 9 hours, bro. Just another 9." But we sold. I remember one of the pictures in the book is us selling out San Francisco. That's such a good feeling to sell out a gig in America because it's miles away.
Yeah,
and they get so little attention from us. They get a tour every record if they're lucky. So. Just felt great to.
It was a nice feeling, and we used the duo thing to our advantage, I think, as well.
We did.
We sort of made a nice little kind of tight show out of it.
We couldn't have done that tour had I done the whole sitting down thing. All of the standing up post RCO gig and the festival season and the whole we're now kind of morphing into some kind of indie alternative thing as opposed to an acoustic soul kind of ninja tune thing. I mean, that really paid dividends. I remember like rocking out quite a lot on that US tour thinking, okay, I got it. Yeah. This is great. I can rock out a little bit. And boy, man, what a some of the distances we covered, and then did the load-in, and then did the sound check, and then did the gig, and then I would do the ballad while you set up the merch. I would sell the merch while you cracked down the stage. I mean, that was a ball-breaking month, man.
And then drive back to the hotel, because the hotel is probably on the outskirts of the town, so we're sort of halfway to the next place.
Dude, that hotel in Washington, when we checked in, and it was like bulletproof. It was the first time I'd checked into a hotel where the guy was sat behind bulletproof glass, probably with a shotgun in his lap, selling rooms by the hour. And there's us working out, okay, which lamppost are we going to back the splitter van up against so no one steals our stuff? And all of a sudden, it was just like... Yeah. When I got into the room, there was a little sign on the door saying, "Please keep your door permanently locked." You're just like, okay, all right, American tour, let's do this, you know.
DC is dicey, honestly.
Scary ass shit. But that was a wonderful, that USA tour was like absolutely slamming. I mean, I loved it. It was rough and ready, and we were good for it. I think
it
we were
was
up
wicked,
for it.
yeah.
Did you guys do some songwriting on that run as well? I seem to remember you guys came back with some fresh song ideas, possibly even some recordings. I think you did.
Know. I think that was the beginning of the following year when I went out and saw Finn when he was living in LA for a bit.
We didn't have on that tour. You don't have the bandwidth, man. You know, I mean, literally, if you've got 90 minutes between soundcheck and gig, that's lucky. You might be able to grab 45-minute power nap or eat.
Yeah. Speaking of eating, we went to the Seattle Pike Street Fish Fry before we played in Seattle.
That's great.
We did. And I had fried oysters, and I was halfway through eating these fried oysters, and I think either you or Rob said to me, "Is that a good idea for you to eat that kind of thing when you're on tour? You know, what would happen if?" And I kind of went, "Just stop talking. I don't want to hear anymore." And as soon as you said that, I started to feel like psychosomatically ill. You know, and I just spent the rest of the day just thinking, don't get ill, don't get ill, don't get ill.
Oh, man. Stomach bugs and touring is never going to work.
I went to this amazing shop called Zion Train that day in Seattle. It used to be my favorite record store, although I went there on my US tour a few years ago, and I went in there, and they didn't have any turntables to play any records. And I said to the guy behind the desk, "Hey man, you know, I'm a record guy. How do I listen to these records?" And he just told me to Google it.
Oh no!
And I was just like, okay, this is no longer my favorite record store. But on that tour, they had some reggae, and they had a little box under the desk, and I was like, "What's in the box?" And he was like, "That's the super secret reggae box. You have to guarantee $100 just for me to open it for you. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I got $100 out, put it down, and he opened this arc. And it was just like, reggae nuggets for days, and just all out my price range. But I spent $100 on some Alpha and Omega records, I think. But yeah, that American tour, it's always the stuff for dreams, isn't it? American tours, you know. No disrespect to Sputnik Haller in Munster or Batchcap in Frankfurt, but you know, playing Seattle, which was a terrible show. If I remember, the Alligator was a really rough show. It was really badly. It was
a bit random.
Lack of advertising funds. But yeah, you get the whole gamut. You get the randoms, you get the LA Glory, you get the New York. Wow, we're in Williamsburg, and you get all the dimensions of a kind of Spinal Tap tour.
Yeah,
It was just so interesting. You learn a lot about yourself on those tours.
Yeah, for sure. And you also have a nice little kind of glimpse back into your past, because I remember playing the 7th Street entry in Minneapolis, and being taken after we played the show, because I was doing the settlement. I was being taken through the main venue, which was the venue, I think, where Prince filmed some of Purple Rain.
Purple Rain,
wow,
yeah. And taken upstairs to a tiny little office where the promoter's lair kind of thing. And being told that we'd done quite well. He said, yeah, hey, for your first time here, you've done pretty well. But I got to tell you, you didn't make the correct amount of tickets. And so you're going to have to give us some money. I was like, hang on a second. I don't know if that's really true.
Is that true? Did we have to pay? Did we have to give them some money?
Well, I remember immediately texting our agent who was in San Francisco and said, 7th Street entry is saying that we need to give them like $50 or something like that. And he texted back within about 4 seconds, don't give them a dime. Something like, I deal with them all the time. Don't give them a dime. And I said, well, our agent said he'll sort it out with you tomorrow. And the guy looked at me in with a very hard stare and went, okay, I'll speak to Dave tomorrow. And that was it. And I was thinking, okay, so we're definitely not like headlining Paradiso anymore at this point.
This was the tour. I've got to say this. I've got to mention this because I don't know if it gets mentioned in the book or not. It's been a while since I read it. But the tour where we got stopped in the middle of America somewhere for a van search.
Oh my God! Yes.
And they were pulling over anything dodgy, especially giant black splitter vans with pasty English drivers.
Wasn't it on the border coming back into America from Canada?
Okay, it was a Canadian-American border. You're quite right.
Yeah.
And so they obviously flagged us. We were ready for the flag. They flagged us. We pulled over. It was at this point. It was one of those. Oh man, if Guy was here, this would be escalating real fast. So we pulled in the van, and these guys really aggressively said, "All right, everyone out of the van. Leave your wallet. Leave your phone. Leave your last will and testament in the driver's seat, and come into this thing for a jolly good talking to." So me, Tim, and Rob, trundled off into this holding room, and there's lots and lots of people there, and everyone sat there in silence.
Yeah.
And on the way there, I'd thrown away any weed that I had from Canada, and I'd got rid of the weed, and I'd thrown it out the window, and I made really careful not to smoke in the van and everything, and but I'd left the fucking empty plastic bag in the glove compartment, I think, or something like that. So I was kind of secretly freaking out, being like, oh no, they might find it. Oh no, they might find it. There's nothing in it, but oh no. And Rob said, in a Rob, our sound guy, in a relatively loud, "Oh, I bet you're glad you threw the drugs out of the window now." And I'm just kind of like, yeah, dude, this is not the time for these loud
conversations.
But it turns out it wasn't that they were interested in.
Money.
Because they walked back in and they called up Timmy to the desk. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Timmy's going to get in trouble. This is great. And it's because they'd found the merch money stuffed down the seat where we used to keep it when we were driving around. And it was about I don't know, it was thousands of dollars in cash just stuffed in an envelope. And of course, these border guards were like, "Okay, sir, is there anything you're not telling us?" And Tim's like, "Well, I'm not really, no. We're just on the way to a concert and let's play a nice performance, a pop performance just for the kids." And he was like, "Okay, well, we found a large amount of cash in your van, sir." And Tim's like, "Well, yes, I mean, it's the merch money, of course. I mean, we sell T-shirts and there's money that we accumulate from such transactions." and he was just kind of like, "Okay, how much is in the bag?" And Tim's like, "Well, I don't know.
Because I
count it. You tell me. I don't know. How much is in your wallet? I don't know." And at which point, some other guard wanders over, like they do, what's going on here, buddy? Well, we seem to have this English guy with a load of money. Okay, is he being funny? Yeah, he's kind of naturally funny. He's an English guy. And then it all just escalated into a kind of diplomatic situation with Timmy being like, well, it's just bloody merch money, for God's sake, you know? Just never had such incidents in all my
Didn't they just keep
days.
screeching, answer the question at him? And Tim was like, I don't know.
God, it was
Answer the
hilarious.
question.
To be fair, Tim stared them down like a mountain goat. He was going nowhere. He was just like, no.
Yeah,
It's merch money.
I also remember because they told us when they told us to go in, they said bring your wallets with you. And one of the bones they had to pick with me was, we told you to bring your wallet with you. And I said, but that's not in my wallet.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me to bring the money. That's just money. I brought my wallet.
How strange.
That was
man.
really scary. I'm glad we got through that, because there was a moment there where it looked like Tim was going to get arrested and renditioned to Guantanamo Bay.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Hey man, they're on edge, and it's so funny when you cross between America and Canada, because with a carnet, which of post Brexit everybody's talking about carnets now. But anyone that's done any of these out of the EU gigs, we've had to use carnets for a while.
We did carnets before they were cool.
Yeah, man. And you have to get it stamped. It's a really bureaucratic medieval situation, but they all have to stamp it 1,000 times in the right place. And every time you go into Canada from America, the Canadians go, they really jimmied your carnet there. Oh, hey, I mean, oh dear, this is a right mess. What are they like over there? They must be, I mean, they've ruined it.
Yeah.
And then they stamp it. And then you go back into the States and they'll be like, oh man, these Canadians, man, God, they really tarred up your carnet there, buddy. Oh my God. Every time you cross the border, they do the same gig. Maybe it was on this run that we said to Sumit, listen, dude, all the merch is in the van and we're crossing over to Canada and you got to pay like an import duty. It's like going into Switzerland in Europe. You're technically supposed to pay 20% on every unit. And Sumit told us to sit on it. He was like, can you just like make it into seats and cover it in a blanket and sit on it?
Yeah.
And I think we did stuff as much as we could under the seats.
We did, yeah. And I also remember we crossed into Canada, and I don't know who it was. Maybe Summit had rang them in advance, and they'd Spotified us, listened to the songs.
That's right, yeah.
Decided they liked it, and they even said, "Look, just give us a couple of copies of the record, and then we'll see you through."
Gosh, we're spilling some international beans here. I'm not sure we should be talking this openly about how we've dodged import duty.
That one
Canada
might have to get edited out. Gents, to be serious.
Rubbish. There's no
Well,
edit. Hashtag no filter, bro. You know, we're down. So then we went to India.
Then we went to India. Yeah.
Oh, fuck,
I know.
what a run that
I mean,
was.
how did that happen? My God.
That happened because I did a TV show out there and I got some traction, and I went out there solo as well and did a couple of gigs just to break the ground. And I was obsessed with Breaking India because, well, for lots of great reasons, but also Mumford had done it, Laura Marling had done it, and I was like, we can do this. We'll play at cost. We can get out there. So I got just enough traction from this TV show, which was kind of like One Shot Not, but in India kind of a vibe, and enough for us to do Bombay, Bangalore. There was a festival in Bangalore, which was the anchor, pulled us in, paid the cost,
NH7.
paid the NH7, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was really excited for it. I knew it was going to be great, and it totally was. But I think for you guys, you really didn't know what to expect. So it was just such an amazing journey, man. Amazing
It was
tour.
insane. And we went with the Staves, who were brilliant, actually, really good companions.
they were
on that
great tour companions.
They were
a
great.
lot of fun.
But that was another incident where, Tim, your bravery, because I remember Finn, I don't know whether you issued the edict or somebody else had issued an edict saying, right, now, gents, bear in mind, you're in 3 cities in 3 days. You've got Mumbai, Bangalore and Delhi. You do not have 24 hours to be ill in a hotel bedroom. Be very, very careful.
Yeah, clean food. Yeah, the clean food edicts, yeah.
Yeah, be very careful what you're eating. And then on the first gig, Tim comes wandering in, eating some meat on a stick he'd just bought off a dude in the road. I remember saying to him, what are you doing? But Tim's never got sick,
Dude,
man.
it's like when I was in China and I didn't get any vaccines done or any injections or nothing. Do you know what I mean? I just wasn't even thinking about it.
Wow.
Wandered in and I wandered into this thing in Shanghai, and it was a menu that was so impenetrable. You just had to point and kind of nod. And what I got given to me on a plate, I swear to this day, it was knuckles from some mammal. I'm telling you.
Oh,
but in
God.
India, the problem is all the food on the street just smells
It's gorgeous.
so amazing. And it doesn't
amazing.
matter if it's being
Good, I
cooked in
know,
an
I know.
upturned oil drum, heated on a shopping trolley.
Yeah.
You're just like, that is going to be the tastiest Indian food I've ever had in my life.
Damn right.
And I can't eat it because
I'm traveling
going to
in
get,
exactly.
very, very, very ill. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, you can take the gamble. You can take the gamble if you're just lounging on a beach. That's fine. But when you've got to be on stage for 90 minutes in a different city the next day that involves a plane journey. Now, do you remember the plane journeys, guys?
Actually, I don't.
We all bought all our guitars. But there's a photo somewhere in there of the queue of us stood there with all of our guitars.
I remember checking in with Anuj and Anuj, our handler, who's awesome. And I remember Anuj saying, it's going to be a bit of excess baggage. I think he was covering the excess baggage as the promoter or something, but it was something like 38 It was also taking merch, right, or leaflets or something.
He had flyers. Yeah, he had boxes of flyers. So it was the strangest. I've never done a check-in like it. Every check-in desk, like when we're doing our festival fly-in, fly-outs, it's stressful enough, but this was the next level, especially since the Staves had bought all their stuff as well. So I don't know how many guitars we had. We should look at the photo and actually count them up, but it's silly.
It was in the region of 25 guitars, I'm sure of that.
It was
and
mad.
like we've all been at airports and we've seen that guy show up with like
Annoying
a trolley
people,
of boxes, like he's just left IKEA and bought a kitchen, and you're like, dude. But seeing us turn up at that, I mean, we learned on that run that actually a lot of these airports have specific check-in desks for nightmare check-ins, like a band.
They do.
And it's often where you have to check in your pets.
Animals,
it's one of those. Yeah, it's like you go over there because you're just going to snag the whole airport up. It's just going to be a nightmare. But I remember arriving in Mumbai and how humid and hot and muggy the airport was. And the fact that it was fully carpeted, but not with like airport carpet, but like... grandparents' living room carpet, like thick, spongy, sort of old school 60s carpet where you think, dude, how long has this carpet been here? This is amazing. This is an antique in itself.
And also, it was outdoors, wasn't it? Wasn't the kind of arrivals area actually outdoors?
Yeah, but you couldn't really tell because the humidity was so extreme. I mean, that was such a great trip for me. I mean, I remember buying something to bring home for my shrine in the bathroom, and I went into this gift shop, and I bought I bought like Ganesh, and I bought the usual suspects. But behind the desk was this one with this really great, like really bright, bejeweled looking sort of effigy in a frame, and I said to the guy, "Oh, what's that?" And he was like, "Well, that's a specific god that's supposed to bring you good luck with money." And I'm like, "How much is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's not for sale." I'm like, "I'll give you like $100 for it." And he's like, "Done." And I walked out with it, and I just thought, God, it works. You just got $100 out of me for this thing. It's probably worth about 50 pence. But yeah, so that was India. And then I remember, let me think. I remember Bombay was powered by trucks outside.
Yeah.
And the exhaust of the truck was leading into the corridor that led into the venue. And if you lingered about in that corridor for too long, you basically got asphyxiated and really high on like carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And the fact that our whole rig was live.
Don't touch
so every
anything.
time I touched the microphone, I got an electric shock.
Yeah.
And RG had said to us, whatever you do not touch the stage. Don't touch the cans,
right.
Don't touch the lights, because you will get a shock.
Yeah. And he was right. I lent my guitar against, because I didn't have a guitar stand at this gig. So I had to lean my guitar against the frame.
Wow.
And, RG was just like, careful when you pick that up, you'll get a shock if you.
Oh my God.
But RG had been kite surfing in Sri Lanka when we arrived. It's typical RG. We arrived and not only that, but I mean, along with the kind of safe food edict was also do not drink the water. You have to get bottled water. You can't drink tap water. Don't even clean your teeth with the tap water. And I mentioned this to RG on the first evening there, and he went, "Well, I've been drinking it for days."
Yeah, but RG is a force of nature. I mean, his body should be. I hope it's studied by science because there's factors that are involved there that means that he's beyond human in so many capacities. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is very true. Very true.
But yeah, I mean, coming back from India, I was just so enamored with that tour and the fact that we did it and so few people do it. And Anuj said to us, it's not that you're amazing or anything. It's just that you made the effort, and so few bands actually do come over and make the effort because there's no money.
Yes.
You guys are going home and you've barely broken even on this tour. It's just for the love of touring. It's just for the wanderlust that you've done this, and that's true. It would be difficult to do India now because we'd be like, but what's the budget? Oh no, but
Sure.
I think we barely got away with India that time without paying to play. But what an amazing experience!
I'd love
Can't
to
wait
go
to
again.
back.
Yeah, I'd love to go back.
Anuj was another character, just an absolutely wonderful person that we've met in these experiences.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of 2012. I think.
Lovely, does it? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, India was the final stretch
Pretty
of the
much.
Perfect Darkness era, I think. Was this Perfect Darkness coming to an end?
Yeah,
then
the
at this
last
point?
gig of the Perfect Darkness era was played in Delhi,
Amazing.
and where we played Sorry I'm Late, unrehearsed, just for the hell of it.
Did
And
we?
I remember that, yeah. And I remember
I
that.
do vaguely remember
Yeah.
that. I mean, I also remember in Delhi that they had 2 changing rooms, one on each side of the stage. And we thought, the staves can have one because they're girls, and we can have the other one because we're boys. And then one of them was just full of industrial batteries that they powered the venue on
Yeah.
because of all the power cuts.
That's true.
And they were just like, look at the fridges during the show. And you'll see how many power cuts there are during the show. And about 4 times during the show, all the fridge lights went off. And then
Yeah.
they'd just pop back on again. You'd be like, so the whole gig was run on batteries.
Wow,
brilliant.
wow.
Absolutely
the music
brilliant.
prevailed. That was,
Yeah.
that was great.
But the rock prevailed.
The Blue Frog, was
Yes,
it?
it did.
Is that the Blue Frog in Delhi? Amazing.
The Blue Frog, exactly.
Blue
Yeah.
Frog.
It's great.
Yeah. It's really weird because there's a coffee shop down my road in Berlin, this Italian place, and I wandered in there the other day and got a coffee, and the girl serving me was like, "Oh my God, you're FINK. I saw you in Delhi at the Blue Frog
No
in
way.
2000."
No
I was just
way.
like, "What?
That's
What are the
a
chances?"
good gig
It's
to
so
say you've
awesome.
seen
That
us
is
at. That's
amazing.
very cool.
That was nice. We all did good there. Yeah. So I mean, after that tour year, I think we needed a break, didn't we? And also, I was just about to move to LA, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And everything was going to change again, but LA was definitely in the sight lines. I think we
Yeah.
had the kind of. I think we all knew at that point probably that we wanted to do another LA record.
Well, look, we'd had this
And-
Warm Shadow sync on Walking
That's
Dead
true.
in 2012, and it was
Yeah.
like, okay, we'd seen how much that can move the needle for us. It acts as a hit single, basically having a sync like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
better. It's almost better than radio. So you know, we'd had a ton of syncs on Sort of Revolution. The syncs were piling up on Perfect Darkness, including my first sync with Ava for her debut movie Middle of Nowhere.
Oh yeah.
So
That's right.
it was kind of like, okay, maybe LA should be tried. You know, if there's money in them thar hills, then
Yeah.
let's try it. And I got a job doing a soundtrack, so we decamped. But that, my friends, is chapter 7.
7, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
I can't wait.
Well, see you there. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, see you there.